sign. Fill in the blanks and shine a light on the precious.
Hey guys, this is Chauncey from Good Music to Know. Today we are joined by the very talented Max Poscente from indie rock band About You, a band that seamlessly blends introspective lyrics with unforgettable melodies. So thank you so much for joining. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that melodies are unforgettable.
Yeah, they definitely are. So to jump into it, I have a question about how the group got started. So what's kind of the origin story behind About You and what inspired the name?
Well, the group got started in Seattle, actually. I lived in Seattle for a year, going to a school called Cornish. And I started with two friends of mine, Will Lone and Luke Hagerman. And really just because they were the only people in the school whose playing I thought would fit the music. And we got along well. A year after that, I moved to Boston to go to Berkeley and to be closer to my girlfriend, who was also going to school out there. Yeah, at Berkeley, I met a whole new group of musicians that then became About You. And I tried having it be a band and that equal responsibilities given to each person, but that just didn't really work. I just learned quickly that nobody's really going to care as much as you do about your thing, which is like not a crazy idea. It's like, of course, you're going to care the most. So instead of divvying up the responsibility, it's like, I'll just assume the responsibility and also assume ownership of this because it is my project and my thing. And then to answer your second question, so that's the origins of it. And then I moved out to LA and built bands out here. And now it's pretty set lineup between John McIntyre on bass, Jake Weissman on guitar. The drummers kind of float around between like who's on the record and who's playing live. On the record is usually Ian Chang. Mackenzie Smith has also played on the record. Bradley Barteau is also on the record. And then live, we tour with my friend Joe James. The name comes from a few different things. I think the best, most concise answer I can give is that people send us stories and we turn the stories into songs. So About You is this literal description of the band's aim to connect with the fan or the listener or the friend, whoever it is. So About You is like a kind of a literal description in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And then I was also curious about the title of your latest EP, so Farewell to Ghost.
Yeah.
And maybe you can tell us how that title ties into some of the themes that are seen throughout the EP as well.
The song Farewell to Ghost was inspired by a story my friend Forrest sent in about being homeless in North Carolina and finding more safety in her fellow unhoused than she did with this guy she was seeing who was housed and he had a family and wife and kids and they had, and he gave ghost tours, like super kitschy, puts on like ghoulish makeup and
Yeah,
like,
I love it.
yeah, like shows you around. I know they're kind of sick, but so this guy wasn't that great of a person. To my understanding, there was a good amount of emotional, or at least as the story goes, there's a good amount of emotional abuse in that. And then within her homeless community, she was able to find safety, support, and community. Period, which rubbed against, I think, just like a common judgment of people on the street. That one, they're unsafe, and two, that they don't have a lot of the things you have. It's like they do, they just look very different. I don't know. Stories like that inspire me just because I think it helps give context to somebody who is easily dehumanized. And I told this to my friend Elliot Skinner. We went to the same high school together in Dallas, called Booker T. Shout out Booker T. The absolute best.
What a name.
Yeah, Booker T. Washington. It's like an art school, so you go for like music, dance.
I'm pretty sure I've heard. Oh, I grew up in the States. I'm pretty sure I've heard of this, but yeah.
Yeah. It's like Erykah Badu went there. If you know Erykah Badu, if you're an Erykah Badu, Roy Hargrove, Edie Brickell, Nora Jones. Anyways, Ellie and I were hanging. I told him, about this concept with About You and how I want to tie stories in. And like I sent this story by my friend Forrest. Elliot has a huge heart and a lot of energy into like the social and activist space. So it naturally, he was like into it. He's like, of course I want to help tell this narrative or maybe like start conversation or, things that could maybe spark something greater. I'm, as well as being a friend of Elliot's, like I'm just a fan of his and he's amazing. So good. So yeah, we just wrote that song, and a couple years later, my producer Jeff and I finished the lyrics and solidified what the music would be, and produced the track in his studio in Dallas called Modern Electric. And Farewell to Ghost was born, I suppose. The cover of it, I made all the covers, the latest like single release or EP release covers, and the picture is a collage of a few things, but one of them is on one of the About You tours, we were stopped at this like railroad train stop. It seems like a 10-mile long
Yeah.
train,
Yeah.
it's like you're just sitting there forever. But it was backlit and it was and front lit by this like really deep red light. So like on tour, I was like, "Ooh, that's nice." So I took the camera out, took a picture of it. So part of that cover is that train, which I thought like tied into a bit of the lineage of unhoused people in America, where they're traveling from place to place. They're kind of vagrants. They're like on the fringes of society constantly. Yeah, I don't know, just a little like Easter egg, I guess.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So diving a bit into the production. So the production of the tracks, it's amazing. What would you say was the most rewarding part of bringing this EP to life in the studio?
Yeah, good question. Well, I'll answer this a bit more. I'll take it like one step further. So this EP is a part of a record, a 10 song, 4 interludes, so 14 tracks total that we just finished at the top of the year. So much happens. We've taken 5 years to make this, and so much has happened in that 5 years. I mean, there's like personal, like internal growth
Yeah.
on like my side and the producer side. But the biggest and most glaring and obvious obstacle in making this and inflection point was my producer, Jeff Sines, who's also one of my most beloved and treasured friends to this day, such a special person. We tracked 4 songs, and then he had this accident where a power line fell in his front yard, and he heard some sound, so he went to go check it out. And as he walks outside, he comes in contact with this power line and is almost electrocuted to death. But this is a power line that's powering the whole block. The likelihood is that if you come in contact with it, you will die.
Yeah.
And he is that one in however many that survived. It's absolutely incredible. And there's so many things in that story that are mind blowing, which I won't get into all the details, but just trust that there's all sorts of facets of this story that are just like, what? That's how, like he was wearing a Virgin Mary necklace. He wore it all the time. He's not particularly religious. I think he just liked the way it looked, but it was silver. And because he was wearing this necklace, the theory is that the electricity didn't go into his head. The metal like melted onto his skin. But because of that necklace, there's a bunch of things that you could say. Because of this, he's alive. Because of this, he's alive. A
Yeah.
lot of it's his fiance, Monica Cooper. She's also a dear friend of mine. She got like a wooden broom and a fire blanket. She had bought a fire blanket earlier that week just because they thought in case of an emergency. Because she had the wooden broom handle, it wasn't metal. She was able to push it off him and throw the newly bought fire blanket on him. Anyways, he survives. But in induced coma, they determine that his hands, electricity has to enter and exit somewhere.
Yeah.
It has to. His muscles, tendons, nerves, everything in his arms were completely dead. So they had to amputate both his hands. And this is a musician, newly a father. His daughter had just been born. He was a motorcycle enthusiast. So losing your hands in general is such a setback.
Yeah.
But as a musician, it's just like there goes so much of how you express yourself. So we record 4 songs. This happens, and a ton of people rally around raising money to support his medical bills. And he's in and out of surgeries over the next 3 months. We end up raising something like 200K or about for him, which is fantastic. And while he's in the hospital, people weren't really sure if he was going to, 1, live. 2, people weren't sure if he lived, if he was going to want to come back to music.
Was there an option at all to get the prosthetics for the hands or no?
Yeah. And he has prosthetics now.
Okay.
He's become pretty good with them. Like he can work his prosthetic like it's his limb at this point. But that's 3.5 years later.
Yeah, it's a long road to recovery for that. Yeah.
Long road. We're FaceTiming in his hospital bed in between amputation surgeries. He still has his right hand at this point, I believe. I think it was his right hand. And they were deciding whether to keep it or cut it. If he kept it, it would have literally just been dead weight and probably some pain too, because he couldn't use it, but he could kind of, I think there's some pain that goes along with like a
Probably some
limb.
nerve damages. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like all that. I think they made the decision to cut it. But before that surgery happened, we were FaceTiming. This is one of the first times we had talked since this accident. And I remember the moment so clearly because I was having brunch with our mutual friend, Davis, who's a photographer. And Davis was like, man, I just don't know if Jeff's going to come back and want to do music. And I remember thinking, as a friend, it's my duty to be the support system in every way possible that I could be, whether it's like making him feel comfortable, helping him do small tasks like putting on shoes, but that came later. I hadn't even seen him yet. First thing was, does he want to do music? We're over FaceTime. It's right before surgery. And I'm like, can I show you this idea I have? And he's like, yeah. And, the doctor's just like holding the phone up to him, like, just holding the phone up to his
Yeah.
face while he's in the hospital bed. I start playing the intro to what will be the next single, and his head kind of cocks. And he's like, "Oh, what if you did like on that second part?" He starts humming. We start writing this song over FaceTime prior to the surgery, and he goes, "Oh, okay, I gotta go. We gotta like the doctors are coming. Like we gotta start the surgery or something. The surgeons are coming or something like that." And I get off the phone. And I'm like, one, I think that we can make this work. Like I think there's a world in which he still does music and we still create and life can continue in some facet. And then I get a call back and it's Jeff again. I'm like, what's up? He goes, "Hey, I have more ideas." And so we go over and we start like, and it's really quick. This was like a 5-minute call, 10-minute
Yeah.
call. But if it was like so juicy, every millisecond was like, it was so potent. And from the beginning of this record, there's almost like this. I mean, oh my gosh, there's so much that goes into it. It's hard to even answer. It's like I would need like serious PR training, and I would need to give the people everything that happened to be like, okay, how do I synthesize this? Because there's so many things. But like seeing his recovery into life and a lot of that rehab being through this record, rehab into friendships, rehab into his new routines, rehab into music.
Yeah.
And it's not only this record, but it was a lot of this record. I'd say that was the most rewarding. I mean, it was traumatizing as a friend to see that, you know?
Yeah.
To see that happen to somebody you love so much. And then to see the way it ripples around family unit and like everybody's got to pitch in and help. And it's like the real test of friendship is stuff like that, you know?
Definitely.
Yeah. Really, really, really special record. It's called The Lighthouse, The Storm.
The Lighthouse, the Storm.
Yeah. The EP is really just like preview,
It's
you know?
a little blurb of what is to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the EP is only 4 or so tracks, so maybe we can talk about the album that's coming out then.
Yeah.
Were there any songs that kind of like came about effortless oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Were there any songs
I don't like that
that
word,
came
effortless.
out effortless? Why can't I say this word right now?
That's the most ironic word you can't say.
Effortlessly.
Effortless.
I have I don't know, I can't say it. Effortless.
That's a tough word
Okay, we'll just
to
edit
mouth.
that part out.
They should
Were
make effortlessly way more effortless of a word, you know?
Okay, so with this upcoming album that you have and the EP as well, were there any particular songs that came about effortlessly, or were there songs that maybe were a bit more difficult to get through, or took a different turn from what you had initially planned,
Yeah.
whether it was the sound or the construction of it?
Yeah. Pretty much every song I wrote just alone in a bedroom, with the exception of a couple. I'd say the most effortless ones were the ones where it was just me alone in a bedroom. Songs like Benji, songs like, I mean, all of them took effort, you know, but some just came out. I would say Farewell to Ghosts, like getting 80% of the way there was super effortless and it just happened. Elliot and I just kind of like jammed and then there it was. And then Jeff and I, what took a lot of work is that last 20% where we were finalizing these lyrics. The most work went into that song I was just telling you about, where we wrote it on his hospital bed. We started writing it there. Then we spent the next 2.5 years playing around with the order of it and the structure and the lyrics and the meaning. And ultimately it's a song about soulmates and a fear of commitment. And like working towards a soulmate not being a thing that just happens, but love takes work. And I'd say, so that song's called What If I Could? And What If I was certainly the most laborious.
Yeah. Yeah. So that actually brings me to my next question. I wanted to know the meaning behind the songs Benji and Jesse. So with Benji, from what I could gather, it almost feels like a song. I don't know if it's about like a long lost friend, whereas with Jesse, I mean, I think it's a love story or what could have been. But then as I was listening more to the lyrics of Benji, I was like, is Benji like this like omniscient present? Because the lyrics were like, I am love, I am infinity, what did I write down? I am value. That I don't think that's I am the voice.
I know.
So so I'm going through the song and then I get hit with this chorus and like, is Benji just this like all-knowing man? I was like, who is Benji? What is Benji? So maybe you can like
Yeah.
break down those two songs.
Yeah, yeah. So Benji is a song I wrote for my late uncle, Benjamin Kurt Bushner. I knew him as Kurt, but Benji just sang better in the chorus. So Benji, we got to be really close when I was preteen into my early teenage years. He was in and out of prison most of his life and was in prison when he was diagnosed with stage 3 or 4 liver cancer. He had cirrhosis of the liver. And when you're in jail, I don't know if you know this, or prison, rather, you aren't allowed to visit a prisoner in like prison hospital or whatever it's called. My grandma got a petition, and she got all sorts of people to sign this petition in the small town of San Angelo, Texas, to have her son released on probation to live out the rest of his days at home. Before he got sent home, we were pen pals, and these letters we would write to each other at the came to me at this perfect time where I'd recently just changed schools. The second school change I'd done, went to a school called Shelton. Some of the teachers were fantastic, but the students I felt so distant from, and couldn't connect to anybody. He became my only friend, it felt like. But he was also my uncle. He's my mom's brother. And because he's such a troublemaker, the relationship we had where I kind of admired him was slightly contentious to my family because they worried about me idolizing this guy who was so troubled. But the person I knew was somebody who lived a life making mistakes, and at the end of his rope had total clarity to then say, I stepped on fire so you don't have to, or I felt this pain so you can avoid it.
Yeah.
And it felt like a wise sage passing down these lessons to me. So he was like my friend and my kind of mentor and my uncle all in one. And when he gets released on probation, I spent like a week and a half with him, or 2 weeks. And every day we would just talk all day. And it was easy. I would just ask him questions, or we'd have a conversation.
Yeah.
And he treated me like an adult, he was one of the first people to do that when I was like 13, which I really appreciated. He ended up passing, but I still had so many questions for him, which this song is one last letter I wrote to him. So if you look at the lyrics, it's written in the form of a letter, the first half.
Yeah.
And then what you're referring to, this I am infinity, I am the truth, all this stuff. That's his response. I was looking to channel kind of what he is now through a second half of the song, which would be like his response letter. So maybe, he was a man when he died, but maybe sexless in the cell. It's hard. I mean, this kind of like gripe with a lot of religion. It's like saying he feels strange. Certainly, I mean, we'll just say he for simplicity's sake, but certainly still guides me in a lot of ways. And I love him so much. So that was like my song to him. Yeah. And then that last part's his response to me, and this like, I'm nameless, it's truly what he is. Because all these like these semantics and these like ways of trying to define something gets you farther and farther away from what could be a deeper truth in a lot of respects. So I'm nameless seemed to sum it up in a way where I don't have to try to perfectly title it, but it's the space that truth exists in. Instead of trying to answer it, that's where the truth is. It's like the truth exists in just the allowance and the stillness and the silence. And Jesse was a story sent in by my friend Jesse, who's a longtime friend of mine. And we went to high school together. She was an actor in high school, and she's been a dancer for the past 8 years. She's incredible. So she sent me this story about going to this church off the coast of Boston called Peddix, or off the coast of Massachusetts. And she just had this relationship with this church that's usually locked, and it's supposed to stay locked. But for her, in this one moment of total coincidence, or whatever you want to call it, happened to be unlocked and empty and nobody guarding it. And unbeknownst to her, she didn't know people would usually be guarding it, or that it would usually be locked, or that it's usually full of people.
Yeah.
But in this moment, it was empty. And she embraced that. She just kind of walked in, started dancing around. And the way light was coming in this moment through the stained glass windows, hitting the floor, inspired her to maybe create and move around the space a bit, volleying any energy back and forth in the space. And I think just the nature of it being a church was like in like an old wooden stained glass windows church, that it was beautiful, but had nothing to do with Christianity. So instead of making it a story about a church, I made it like a one night stand story.
Oh, is that what it's about?
A little bit. It's kind of like it's like I made like two characters where they're like passing ships in the night,
Yes. Yeah.
But instead of it being two people, it's like her in this church.
In space. Yeah.
Yeah, in the space. Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool, because there's like the fleeting time. Obviously, she doesn't know if people are going to come back. And
Yeah. And when she told her friends about it, you guys have to check this out. They go, we'll go after this hike. They go after the hike. It's locked. There's a security guard in front. He's like, what are you talking about? You can't go in here. Nobody's allowed to go in here ever. This is for events only. And she's like, well, what are you doing? He's like, I'm security. Like, you can't, I'm the last inside. So anyway, And she, I don't know, felt like a deeper specialness, I think, because it's like, oh yeah, okay, that was extra special now. Yeah, and, to my knowledge, Jesse really likes the song, which is great.
So I was initially going to ask this question for the EP, but since
Hmm.
your coming album has more tracks on it, is there a track on this new album coming out that you feel best represents the overall essence of the album, and maybe you can explain why?
Yeah, I think the essence of the album can be found in two songs. One is Mona, probably Jesse Mona, and then this song called Fame. At the heart of this album is fusion. And in each one of those songs, you'll hear a lot of inspiration. The attempt, our goal with this album was, it was a heavily inspired record and inspired by a lot of different types of music, from like house to like old blues and garage rock from the early 2000s, like Afrobeat, hip hop, like
Wow.
late 90s and like into like early 2010s hip hop, into like folk music. All we tried to do was just be inspired by it and then just see how it comes out. When
Yeah.
I wrote Mona, it was more straight. Mona, don't you love me? It was just straight. And then our friend Jason Burt came in the studio and he like made this. He goes, he said something to the effect of like, "All right, y'all might hate this, but I'm just gonna like do my thing, and then just like if it's stupid, delete it later." And then he gives it a swing, and it's kind of like and he makes this beat to it instead of it being live drums. Now it's program drum. In that moment, really inspired a lot of this record because it was like if we can find a world where the low end of hip hop is represented
Mm.
and certain like samples in hip hop is represented along with a live kit, along with like live guitars,
Yeah.
then we've found something special. It's like the Venn diagram where those two circles
Yeah.
lap. And that's certainly in Mona and in Jesse too. It's like I drew a lot of inspiration from Fela Kuti and listening to like Afro-Cuban music, which is on the record. The last song in the record is like heavily inspired by like house music and like drum and bass, but then also by Portishead. And I don't know. Yeah, we're just all such fans of music, you know?
Is it hard blending all these different genres and sounds together to get like a cohesive album?
For
Is it?
sure.
Yeah. Okay.
100%. Yeah, because I'm somebody who you could probably tell from this interview, I'll just throw out a million ideas. But what
Yeah.
Jeff is really good at is he's good at being like, okay, not that, not that.
Kind of fine tuning the
Yeah.
ideas. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, you need the fine tuner. Same with Carter, who engineered. I'm constantly like trusting my collaborators to just give me their input. Like, is this too much? Or just asking people what they think or something. Because I can just go. I could throw a million ideas.
Yeah.
But coming up with ideas is easy. It's refining them. I think that can be a lot harder. And that's probably the struggle of this. Is like, okay, we've thrown in the dance hall beat, and now we've thrown in the St. Vincent Jack White guitars. How do we blend these two? There's technical ways of answering that, but yes, it was difficult, but it's also really rewarding to find. It's like, oh wow, okay, I think we're doing something new here.
Yeah. So what would you classify the sound or genre then for this upcoming album? If you had to give it a name, I suppose.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I think I'll leave that up to some witty columnist or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm talking to somebody who doesn't really listen to music on, you know, like the elevator pitch would be like it's indie rock,
Hmm.
but that doesn't feel like it really captures the breadth of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll leave that up to whoever listens to it.
What do you hope listeners take away from your new and upcoming album?
I hope a few things. I want people to be inspired by this. I want people to listen and feel energy, whether that's for an epiphany or a new idea or energy to get off the couch or like get out of bed or to go do something or to have that conversation or to pursue something in their life they wanted to pursue. I think if I were to like distill a goal of this, maybe not a goal, but like an unintended outcome of somebody listening to this is that it inspires people. I would
Yeah.
I would love for it to inspire people. And I know I said I can't really put my finger on the genre, but I can say that walking away from listening to the whole record the other day, and we've felt this at times, but walking away from listening to the whole record and at how this guy named Howie Weinberg mastered the thing. He's a freaking legend. But yeah, I was like, I think we just made a I think we just made like a record that might be in an 100 of all time best rock records, maybe. Maybe. I don't know. But personally,
Well, you put it out there now, so
I walked away being like, I'm pretty sure we just made it like a timeless piece of work. I know it's crazy to say, but I
it's
really
not that's the feeling you want. I mean, it'd be horrible if you had the reverse feeling to that, so
yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I've certainly had that feeling too of like walking away from it being like, "God, this is stupid. Like we should have put this out years ago. Like it's so out of date now." Or like, God, it's stupid to begin with. And what were we thinking? But no, it's to me, it's like the future of rock and roll is that record because we're like a student of we're all students of rock and roll and we're students of music, but we're also looking at ways we can push boundaries and push what the definition of rock and roll might be. And like, does rock and roll have autotune? Well, fuck, it does now, or does it have like 808s constantly? And like, does it, I don't know. It's like, there's plenty of other people who've done this, but to me, it just feels new and fresh. And it's really just from us being honest and just following our intuition, just be like, this sounds good. This feels good. Let's do it. Let's commit. And I would hope that inspiration we felt in those moments comes through and then inspires other people.
you guys are rock innovators, changing the game.
We're changing the game. I don't think we have a choice.
Well, that was one thing I really liked about your music is that there's a sense of nostalgia there, but it still feels fresh, which is a really nice contrast. So I definitely got that from this EP, and that's what hooked me when I
Yeah.
first heard your music. Yeah. And then I suppose,
Yeah.
are there any last words that you would like to leave your fans or the listeners with?
Yeah. I'll say, if you have a story that you want turned into a song, hit us up. And I can't promise you that it will be on the next record, but I can promise you, I can promise you that there's a 90% chance I'll read it. Yeah. So long that it's not like a million stories, because I just simply don't read that much. But yeah, send us your stories.
And where can they send the stories?
You can send it to our Instagram or you can email us at abandaboutyou@gmail.com. Yeah. Thank you for doing this. Chauncey,
Yeah,
right?
of course. Chauncey, yeah.
Chauncey, yeah, thank you.
Sharing meals, avoiding drama. While he's penthouse in the tower, faking friends by the